My name is Pashara Piampong-Sant, and I am here with Nicola Crosta, the Executive Vice President of EPIC Foundation. So Nicola, many people have been asking, how does EPIC select high-impact social organizations? Could you tell us how you do this?
Sure. So before I get into the selection methodology of EPIC Foundation, let me say a few words about the context here. We look today at the philanthropic industry as a market that is fundamentally characterized by a market failure. In other words, what we see are donors on one end that are trying to select, to find high impact organizations to allocate their resources, and on the other hand, high impact organizations that need that capital, but this demand and supply don't meet efficiently. So at EPIC, we think that one of the reasons for why this demand and supply are not meeting efficiently is that there is a shortage of robust and sophisticated tools to help connect those donors to those high impact organizations. And for this reason, we've put together what we call an EPIC toolkit that has three main parts that fundamentally support that connection between donors and NGOs in three critical ways. One is they facilitate so the way donors can select high impact organizations. Two, they provide the monitoring that is needed to support these relationships, so they allow donors to monitor the impact of the work of these organizations and ultimately of their resources. And third, they facilitate, foster the experience and the involvement of donors in their philanthropic investments. So today we focus on selection, so on the first part of this toolkit. So let me say that the selection methodology we discussed today has been applied at a global level, so very extensively during the last 2 years, and with over 2,000 NGOs and social enterprises from over 100 countries around the world that have participated in EPIC selection process.
So now that we have a better understanding of the context behind the selection process, could you explain about the methodology and the actual criteria that EPIC uses to select these organizations?
Sure. Let me say a few words first about the three guiding principles that we have at EPIC and that help us frame our approach basically to the selection methodology. So first, a commitment to apply a holistic approach. What does this mean? What it means basically is that we don't select projects or specific programs. The aim of our selection is to find great organizations to whom we can allocate unrestricted grants. So the unit of analysis here is not a project, is the entire organization. So a holistic approach to selection. The second guiding principle is the use of technology. So we believe that in the years where we live, there are new technologies that can be extremely useful to foster the efficiency of the selection process, especially if you want to run it on a global scale. So we are very committed to use technology to streamline and to make more efficient, more fair, and more transparent the whole selection process. And third, the collaborative nature of the process. We believe that this should not be a sort of a top-down exercise from donors that go around and look for organizations and somehow judge them during a selection process, but rather it should be a highly collaborative process where basically everybody can learn, everybody can get smarter throughout it. So getting to the actual defining characteristics of this EPIC selection methodology, basically there are two things to be understood. On the one hand, the 15 factors or criteria that we use to basically guide our analysis and trying to understand whether an organization is a good one or not, and then the 3 stages of due diligence that characterize our process. So those 15 criteria guide our analysis. They remain the same throughout the 3 stages of due diligence. It is simply that due diligence, that selection, that gets deeper and deeper. So The purpose here obviously is not to go in details through each of these 15 factors, but just to give a sense of how they are organized and what they allow us to look at. Well, fundamentally three things. So these 15 factors are grouped in three subsets. So with the first five, and you can see the list in this slide, we look at the what. So what is the impact that the organization wants to achieve? With the second subset of criteria, we look at the how. So the unit of analysis here is no longer what the organization wants to achieve, but how is this nonprofit or this social enterprise organized? Its finance, its fundraising, its monitoring and evaluation, its use of technology or digital strategy. So all the key operational aspects of its organization. And then the last subset of factors looks at the who. So who are the people that make this organization, and we look at these at all levels, from the founder or co-founders to the board, to the management, to the teams and the people that are key actors in the organization. So I mentioned the 15 criteria. We use them across three stages. All the details again are presented in the slide that you can see. Fundamentally, the first stage, stage one, starts with an online application. We have a call for proposal that is disseminated globally, leveraging social media and a very extensive of fantastic partners, over 100 partners that we have around the world that basically spread the word about this ongoing selection. Then organizations that want to participate can apply online. We try to make this first stage very simple as possible. So, online web form, multiple choice questions. So basically, organizations don't need to put a lot of time in the application at this stage. Then, during the last 2 years, we had roughly 2,000 organizations applying, and about 100 were moved to stage 2 based on our analysis. And of course, I think it's important to note that in the first stage we use technology a lot to manage this large quantity of applications. So the data that we receive from organizations is captured by our CRM system, Salesforce, which allows also for some automatic analysis. So I mentioned that in our experience, about 100 organizations make it to stage 2, and this is basically when the analysis gets deeper and deeper. We acquire more materials from these organizations, and this is basically what characterizes the second stage. This is when we start interacting directly with these organizations through meetings when possible, and in most cases through telephone interviews or video conferences. Then about 50% of the stage 2 organizations make it to stage 3, and this is where basically when our team gets on the road. And so the main element, the main characteristic of this stage 2 is that this is field evaluation. We go visit these organizations, we spend time with their management, with their teams, we visit the project, we speak with beneficiaries, with their partners. So we basically try to get a direct observation of the work of this organization in the field. All these gets summarized in a report that gets submitted to our investment committee, that so has all the information it needs to make an informed decision.
Right. So the individual 15 criteria and 3 stages seem pretty clear now, but how do they all come together? How do you get from that to the final outcomes of the selection process?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, criteria, 3 stages are clear. What happens basically is, and you can see it clearly from this slide, is that when you use these 15 factors or criteria and you score them individually throughout 3 stages, that basically means that for each of the finalist organization, we end up having 45 data points. So it's a very strong quantitative base for our analysis. We couple that, of course, with the qualitative evaluation an analysis that gets summarized across the process. And so all of these come together and provides a very strong basis for our investment committee to make an informed and as fair as possible decision on the selection process. And so there are fundamentally three key outputs to our selection. So first, as I mentioned, the selection process allows to select the top organizations, which is the primary aim of all these. So it allows us to identify those very robust organizations that then become part of EPIC's portfolio, of global portfolio of organizations that get supported. And during the first 2 years, we selected 30 organizations globally. The second output of this process has to do with the organizations that make it to the stage 3 but are actually not selected. And we like to be to keep in touch with them. Some of them are, and most of them actually, are very good. So what we do, what we provide them are basically two things. First, our feedback. So we do go back to them and not just communicate the news that they were not selected, but we actively engage with them to discuss the reason why they were not selected. So our analysis, which is usually a useful thing to do both for us and for them. And then we connect them as much as we can with pro bono partners that we believe can help strengthen some aspects of their operations. And so, and then the last and certainly not least output of all this process is that, we realized it clearly during the last 2 years, is that this process allows to bring together an incredible quality and quantity of information. We have over 30,000 data points that tell us a lot about non-profit social enterprises and trends in the sector. So we summarize all these in a simple knowledge product. We call it Epic Outlook, which is a way for us to share what we learn throughout this process. Okay, so I believe that during the last 10 minutes I've touched upon 3 points. So let me summarize. The first point is that at Epic we believe firmly that our sector, the philanthropic industry, needs more sophisticated, more robust tools to support the selection of high impact organizations, and so to allow philanthropic capital to be allocated more efficiently to the best organizations around the world. Secondly, I have introduced the most defining characteristics of EPIC selection methodology, and last but not least, let me mention that I think it's very important to say that this is all work in progress for us. So we are very much committed to keep sharing and learning from others.
Great. Thank you, Nicola, for your time.
Thank you, Bashar.